Hey everyone. We live in a pretty good age where when someone makes like a huge health advancement to help someone out that desperately needs the help, it's gotten to the point that's actually impressive enough that actually makes you like stand back and be, shocked by it because of how like incredible it is. Like even if you have a very basic understanding of like health conditions or just medical procedures, it's still like astonishing enough to even make someone that barely knows anything about it still be astounded by it. Like back in the day in the Victorian era, when people were throwing buckets of their own feces out of the window, they realized like doctors found out that if you wash your hand before delivering a baby, the odds of the mom surviving go up like 50%. Like that tiny bit of knowledge was just astounding to them. So fast forward to the present today, and we've made like enough improvements to be actually proud of, as opposed to finding like very basic stuff that make a huge difference, but we just ignored because we're dumb. And the news in today's video was one of those like rare moments that make me like actually verbally speak out and say like, God damn, that's incredible. Like normally when you're going scrolling through your phone, you see so much stuff that you just you stare through it. But this moment today made me consciously appreciate just how like massive of an improvement it is for this person's life, which is the story of this guy, Nolan Arbau, whom you've most likely seen by trying out the Neuralink implant he had by playing a game of chess, which is definitely one of the biggest clips that have blown up recently of him, which admittedly, for a good reason, because it is just incredible. For someone in that horrible of a condition, being able to pull something off like this complex, where 200 years ago, like even the idea of someone like him playing a game of chess would seem impossible. But even now, considering all the stuff that have happened before him, it's still incredible to see this happen. But the second impact that made the story way better for me is when I first read the article where like after he was more comfortable using the implant to play a game of chess, he moved forward to play specifically Civilization 6, which he got so like obsessed with. He's had 8-hour gaming sessions since then because the game is so addictive. Where when I first read that, it just put like a huge smile on my face because it was such like a nice moment. But before I talk about that, I want to give like a quick backstory about this guy because it is very unfortunate. Where he originally became paralyzed from the shoulders down about 8 years ago from a horrible car accident. Which to me, I'd hate hearing these kind of stories because it's so miserable, where it's someone where most likely it was completely like out of control, but it was the worst outcome for them in that scenario. And even though coming out alive from that scenario is still decent, the whole process of like healing and getting better to the point that you don't have to stay at hospital but still being in a wheelchair, that is still awful. And he most likely had implants to make his day-to-day life easier, but I haven't read or found any that were like as a huge improvement as this one, like the Neuralink implant, which he actually got back in January, even though I think it was only recently around February or March where that first stream was held by one of his assistants where it showed him playing a game of chess. And it was legitimately like a really nice moment where even though he didn't mention there was some issues going on with the implant that he actually like fixed every once in a while, it's still like a huge improvement for this guy. Which to anyone else, the idea of playing like a simple game of chess isn't that shocking, but to him, he would never imagine being at this level after the incident. And I think after a couple of times of using it, he has gotten to the point where he doesn't have to purely rely on playing chess, and he actually can play other more complex games because he has a better grasp on the implant and he doesn't have to like constantly update it and fix it every so often. And it's really good to hear that he wasn't just confined to only playing chess, because even though that's like a huge like level, not just for him but just like medical procedures in general, the enjoyability and fun probably wouldn't last that long after maybe like a week. So it's still like I'm still amazed that he can move forward to other games that aren't just purely chess and are slightly more complex in terms of like how the game works. With one of those first games being, like I said, Civilization 6, which makes me so happy because I know that's one of those games where if you're obsessed with it, you can play for like hours on end, which he has actually mentioned between like playing 8-hour sessions or just staying up all night just to play the game. Because not only is that a good game, but probably the first time in a long time where like he's played a game that isn't just like very simple, like he'd actually play like with more levels of complexity. And as every one of those games you can purely play on mouse, where it would be simple to use like the shortcuts on a keyboard, but again, just using a mouse would be enough to just play the game to its fullest. Compared to other games where like if you don't have a keyboard or you can't use one, it's already like limited to you by a half. Or even despite having like accessible controllers like an Xbox One or a PlayStation 1, it's still like way harder to play as normally compared to just using like a traditional sense with a mouse and keyboard, which he has used those types of controllers where even though they were decent for like a few minutes, but after a while the pain and the pressure point got so bad that even using his hands or feet were way too much and he would have to stop playing the game for like a few minutes. Which is definitely why this Neuralink implant made like a huge difference in his life, where he doesn't have to worry about the pain of using his hands or feet, even no matter like how accessible it is for him. Just using his mind or like the implant makes it way easier for him. And to be honest, I have seen one of those who like buy Xbox where they try really hard to make it as like complex control controller, but still keeping it simple. But it never works because every like disabled person has their own condition where they can use one limb easier than the other, but still like it's impossible to make like one controller work for every person. So it makes sense why like using a mouse would be the simplest way to play a game, or like at best it has like 3 different options, you know, like left click, right click, it's moving the cursor around. Where even though it sounds very simple, a lot of games, if they're optimized correctly, you can just play it by that with those 3 options. But sadly that kind of market is very tiny, and most developers don't want to waste their time to make it like have 5 people play the game and maybe not enjoy it. So I am glad there was like a good middle ground where the game was very simple enough for someone to play it, and the gameplay was, you know, on a good enough level of quality, and it's reliable enough to use it for like hours on end to play the game non-stop. The one thing I feel bad for him is that in that game, Civ 6, the UI is just utter dog shit. So that's the one way where like even though he can use the cursor quickly, the UI would probably like cut the amount of time that he can play for in half, because it's just so painful to like go from one section then the other, where even though it is compensated by the shortcuts on a keyboard, of course he can't use that, so he has to like take the long way around. Well, of course it's not his fault, but that game is infamous for like not being optimized for the UI. So people have had to make mods, like the fans themselves have had to work hard to find ways to make it, you know, just simple enough to play for anyone else. So even though the game is, you know, quite old, I feel like it's a telling sign where if people have to make mods for normal people that can use, you know, the entire body and their arms, they have to make mods to make like the UI bearable enough to play for like as long as they want. So that's one aspect I feel bad for him for. But that can be thinking, if like he can play a normal game like Civ 6 and not just chess, that gives him like way more freedom to play other games that not only would he enjoy, but that he can stream as well. Which I know sounds like a very childish idea, but that would legitimately be a very good like marketing tactic. Just like being the idea of like being a paralyzed person, but still being able to play games and stream it, where a lot of people just watch it for that factor. And to be honest, when you look at most like big streamers and how moronic or brain dead they are, it really wouldn't be that hard to like have a huge fan base that quickly, just about that story alone. But my main point being like how the simple implant that really isn't that like complex can like take his life on a way better level, when he can do more stuff simply by being able to use a mouse on a PC, where it doesn't sound that hard, but when he was never able to before in the past, like that really makes a huge difference, gives him like way more freedom to do stuff in his normal life. So to me at least, even if you don't care about gaming, like that news is like heartwarming enough to at least make you happy and appreciate like he had something like this come into his life to make it like way easier for him in a lot of ways.